Stop, take a look at news stories making headlines around the globe. Eminent personalities, including former President Olusegun Obasanjo and former Vice President Atiku Abubakar, Nobel laureate Professor Wole Soyinka, have faulted Tuesday's military crackdown on unarmed protesters at the Lekki toll gate, describing it as premature. The incident also elicited reactions from the United Nations Secretary General Antonio Guterres, a former United States President Bill Clinton, former U.S. Vice President Joe Biden, United Kingdom Secretary of State for Foreign, Commonwealth and Developmental Affairs Dominic Raab, President Nana Akufo-Addo of Ghana, and the Archbishop of Canterbury, Justin Welby, the European Union and the Oni of Ife, Oba Adeyeye Ogunwusi. They all expressed concern about the shooting of the protesters and called for restraint. In the interim, the presidency has appealed for understanding and calm nationwide, even as the Defense Headquarters has kept sealed lips on the matter, but has promised to brief journalists on the shooting incident today. Guys, this on the table.
Well, we're still going to wait to hear what the DHQ has to say about it. But international reaction has been universal condemnation, and rightly so. The reaction of our Nigerian leaders is so funny. It's like really in poor taste that a former president, in the person of Olusegun Obasanjo, took the initiative to address the nation, whereas a sitting president is silent. That really does speak volumes. I appreciated his comments. It was sort of twofold. He appealed to the protesters, but also wasn't hesitant in apportioning blame where he feels it should be laid. He referred to President Buhari and his lieutenants and where he felt there were lapses, and just a hasty conclusion, a hasty escalation, as it were, rather than going through the process of dialogue. And he also had a message for the protesters as well about just safekeeping. You know, the sanctity of human life really is the point here, and I appreciated his comments there. And he made a point of commending the governor of Lagos and his prompt action, which I'm sure will help his cause. We'll be talking to him later at length. But yes, I think it's really the deafening silence. The presidency has issued a statement, but not the president. Even after we had this display on the Lekki Bridge that caused international outrage, the president remains silent. It is completely unacceptable. It must be said, it must be repeated. And we never learn. Anyway, those who don't learn from the lessons of history are doomed to repeat them. This issue of police brutality, if you will recall, cast your mind back to 2009. How did the Boko Haram crisis start? Was it not police brutality? Yeah. Mohammed Yusuf, their leader, was arrested in one piece. Before anybody could say anything, his body was riddled. He was riddled with bullets. He was shot dead. And that is what we're still fighting in the north now. And here we go again with this same issue of high-handedness from the security forces. You cannot use lethal force on unarmed protesters. And I really am extremely interested to hear what the GHQ have to say about it. Who gave the order? That's just the only question people want answered right now. And who's going to be held accountable for that?
Questions, Dr. Abati?
Well, there had been an initial reaction, of course, from the Nigerian army, denying that the persons who went to the Lekki toll gate plaza were Nigerian soldiers, which was what brought up the concern about whether or not this could possibly be unknown soldiers. And there are a lot of conspiracy theories out there. Even the military officers who had been identified as persons who are commanding officers of the particular brigade that was said to have gone there, they've also been denying. But as you said, whatever the Defense Headquarters is going to say, even if they speak now, people will be wondering why it has taken them more than 48 hours to speak. It's not as if whatever they want to say will require some kind of rocket science or any extensive investigation. Those soldiers who were shown in those videos were actually Nigerian soldiers. It was a thing that the Defense Headquarters could have dealt with immediately and offer an explanation to the Nigerian people. So whatever explanation they offer, I'm sure there will be that problem of trust and disbelief, because people will say, well, why are they speaking now? This is clearly an afterthought. The condemnation has been, yes, global and universal. Leaders, statesmen, and also celebrities. Beyonce has spoken up. Naomi Campbell, Kanye West. You know, the whole of humanity is united against behind the struggle of the Nigerian people, to check inhumanity, injustice, brutality, extortion, extrajudicial killing. And the fact that this has reportedly continued unabated, even in the face of protests, is what makes it even very scandalous. All of this is reminiscent of the Abacha days. Under Abacha, Nigerians not only protested, they even asked that Nigeria should be sanctioned. They asked that Nigeria should be made a pariah state until democratic rule was restored. And now people are talking again about democracy, about the need for justice, about the rule of law. Now, you have quoted at length former President Olusegun Obasanjo. He talked about leadership. He said this is a moment that calls for leadership. Not just leadership, mature leadership. And well, I guess what he means, if you can take the liberty of interpreting it by mature leadership, is that the leaders must be seen to be interested in the welfare of their people. The leaders must be seen to be concerned about what is happening. We may not be getting that leadership as we expected from the presidency, but we've seen it in other places. Church leaders have come forward. Other leaders within civil society have come forward and they've spoken up. That gap, that alienation between the people and the government at the center is in part what is responsible for the continuing tension in the country, and also for all the conspiracy theories that are beginning to come up about whether what we're really dealing with is not beyond the NSAS campaign, and whether or not, some other higher forces beyond the direct control of even the federal government itself, may have taken over the struggle. But what happened yesterday across the country is, again, very unfortunate. In Lagos alone, 12 police stations were razed to the ground. In one particular case, at the Makinde police station around the Mafoluku area, one young man, who was in his house, was hit by a stray bullet and he died. He was not involved in the protest. He was just at home. Other facilities were destroyed, including traffic lights. I saw a video of one young man pulling down traffic lights. Now, what is the purpose of destroying traffic lights? The whole thing degenerated into arson. The BRT terminal at Ojodubaga, the buses were burnt. The BRT terminal at Onyiwo was burned down. The MPA, Nigerian Post Authority headquarters at Marina, was also razed to the ground. The magistrate, the Igboshere High Court and the Magistrate Court, they were both attacked. Documents were taken away. In fact, in the process, one of the hoodlums adorned himself in a wig and a gown. And he wanted to, I don't know whether he appointed himself a judge. People attacked personal homes. The family home of the governor was also attacked. Newspaper houses, media houses were targeted. The palace of the Oba of Lagos was attacked. They made away with property and made away with the Oba's staff of office. And people have been joking about it, that maybe the gentleman with the staff of office, that hoodlum, should be just coronated as the next Oba of Lagos.
No,
now,
thank you.
That may sound ludicrous, but that's just to show you the kind of mayhem that overtook the city of Lagos yesterday. At the end of the day, all of us are going to pay the price for that. And let us spare a thought for the policemen who were attacked, the police stations. I hope that is not going to result in a radical escalation of crime, of the crime wave in the city of Lagos. Because no matter what the problem with the police may be, they still feel a gap in terms of protecting lives and property.
Huge gap.
And when all of this is over, we will still need these same policemen.
Yeah.
I don't know how that can be communicated. And also all those policemen who were brutalized, who were killed, we forget sometimes that, yes, they may have their excesses, but they are also human beings with family members.
Yes.
And it's not every policeman that is an enemy of the people, as we may have constructed. So all of this, every day, we sit down here, we just see one sad spectacle after the other. And in other parts of the country, there was also violence yesterday, mindless violence. In Rivers, Obigbo police station was attacked. And there is a yet unconfirmed report that the DPO in that station was beheaded. Now, that's horrendous. In Akure, in Ondo State, the thing degenerated to a conflict between APC supporters and supporters of the leading opposition
That one
party.
was on ground before. I can tell you for free, Dr.
Yes.
Leading up to that election, the Saturday before that election, I was traveling through that road. I was in Ore when I heard about the free-for-all in Akure that day. So that tension was already on ground. They just used this
to catalyze it. To catalyze it.
Talks between APC and PDP already fighting on ground in Ondo State.
So it's, this is not an interesting time to be the governor of a state. Yeah. I don't envy the people who are governors in the affected states, Ondo, Ebonyi, Kano, Kaduna,
Honestly.
Lagos, Edo. They can just keep...
First COVID-19, now this.
Now this. And one other thing I would just like to say is, please, I know there are a lot of tension, people frayed nerves out there, but let's just keep the peace. Let's not vandalize these properties. Let's just keep the peace, because like you said rightly, we'll still have to pay the price one way or the other. We still need the police in the society.
We still need the BRT buses.
We still need the BRT buses to take us from one point to another. I just believe the hoodlums need to calm things down. Everybody needs to calm things down. Let's restore peace to our streets, because the only way where Nigeria can truly achieve its great potential and the great nation and the new Nigeria we want is through when we have peace on the street, not anarchy. And, the president was talking the other day about us slipping into a recession. With all this damage, it will make us slip faster into a recession. In fact,
take longer to recover.
Take longer to recover, because this destruction of life and property. Just look at the commercial activity that have gone on in Lagos today that can't go on, people that can't earn salaries. Take, for instance, the exams. WAEC and NECO has to be stopped.
Yes.
Because of all of this.
Yes.
See the setback on the life of the students and things like that. We're already complaining that COVID-19 has given them a setback in the academic calendar. You now having this, another setback. Yeah. See people that have lost their lives. See a lot of people.
That young man, he was at home.
At home, and a stray bullet hit him. But everybody should be on ground. And I want to react to Wole Soyinka's statement. He said something very strongly. He said this is the time to go back to town hall meetings and community engagement. And this is where I want to come in. Community leaders should be able to step in and speak to some of these hoodlums. We're talking off air. Most of them are reasonable. There's a network to all of this. They can be talked to. Please, if you're a community leader out there, step in and speak to all these hoodlums. They should stop this raiding of malls, raiding of businesses and the likes, because I know a lot of community leaders have influences over these people. You can talk to them. They can calm down on things and all of it. And you see, because the fact is, a lot of these hoodlums are just waiting for something to latch onto. Let's not forget, during the South African xenophobic protests, this was how rampaging went on. Even during COVID, you remember that people had to mount, guard on their streets, to be able to push these hoodlums away from coming. There were hoodlums attacked during COVID. It was every part of Lagos. Hoodlums were everywhere during the COVID-19 pandemic lockdown, attacking pedestrians and all of that. So they are always looking for these opportunities. But I believe if community leaders can come together, speak to them as those on the street are speaking to them, as the governor too will be speaking to people when we interview him later today, I think we will bring all this effort and calm things, that things can really calm down. We need peace and development in Nigeria, and RIP to the souls lost.
One other thing that we need to worry about is the fact that, supply chains have been disrupted.
Yes.
All these states declaring curfew and no movement, and many of the people who are on lockdown in Lagos as a result of the curfew, which has now even been extended, very soon people will run out of foodstuffs in the house.
There's no time to stock up.
Because there's no time to stock up. You can't go out. I hope that the state government will work that into their calculation, because when other people who are not yet on the streets become really hungry, they could also become very desperate. Yeah. And that's why the presidency should move beyond issuing press statements and tweets on Twitter and get the president to come forward. Although, as I said previously, there will be people putting pressure on the president, saying don't mind them. When they are tired, they will find peace on their own.
Peace is the principal thing. That's all on headlines. We'll take a short break now. When we return, we'll have the trio of Rotus, Michael and Adeso Omaro, to give us updates on African global business. Stay with us. All right, welcome back to the morning show right here on the Rise News channel. So we'll take our dependable Rotus Odiri. Hi, Rotus, how's it going?
Doing fine, Rafai. Good to see you. Good morning to you. Good morning
for the
to
advice this morning.
Yes, indeed. We have to stick together. Eh? Good morning, Doctor. So, I mean, we're pretty much just still focusing on the aftermath of what we've seen and assessing damage to a number of businesses. But interestingly enough, remember Herbert Wigwe, the managing director of the Access Bank Group, he said yesterday that there was some confusion as to the buildings where allegedly soldiers had been perched on. So, if we take a look at this in the red there, he said, look, you may be confusing our Access Bank building, which is circled in red, with another building that I'm circling in green, and possibly another one in yellow that's behind his building. He said, look, our building, there are no soldiers that are there. You should not be confusing our building with another one that's being set up. So this pretty much, I mean, there are some drones. These are still images from another drone surveillance of the area showing what the aftermath of the damage. Essentially, this is just, a pictorial representation of what he was saying, that, look, there are other buildings a block from where the Access Bank towers are, and our building is not being used by any soldiers at all for any reason at all. So again, this just clarifies it as I was looking at the drone footage, that again, the Access Bank tower is in red, and this building there in green could possibly be what people were referring to, two different towers that are overlooking the toll. Now, with respect to damage to property, there was an ATM on Admiralty Way. If we think we have another image of that, where you will see a number of men who are actually, I believe, fixing the damage that had been that in the yellow arrow at the top left of the screen there. When we actually see the actual drone footage, you'll see them actually trying to repair some of the damage that took place. You can see this is the Admiralty Way in Lekki Phase 1. And I think you're already showing, as you were having your chat earlier on, they were actually showing the active drone footage going around the area. I think there's even images of, so we're starting from here now. You can see that building there that's covered in soot, which could have been a result of fire. And now we're overlooking the Access Bank building in the middle, and then the two other buildings that are to the left and to the right of it. So again, those two buildings that are, Access Bank is between those two buildings that Herbert Wigwe was referring to, that could possibly have been used by soldiers, but again, not by his. No, he didn't use his building. Again, these are just shots of the area now. We're seeing how everything. This is the aftermath. Still a lot of cleanup that has to take place with respect to the surrounding area. And there was someone on Twitter who said, "Look, we need more drone shots." Remember when Tokunbo Oyetunji bravely was, tailing the rapid response squad officers yesterday? They kept, this commander kept by himself. You can see that we want a new Nigeria image that was scrawled into the ground. Drone shots allow you to see that clearly. He kept stopping by, on his own. That's the rapid response squad, talking to the communities in blocks. And Adeswa and myself on Newsday yesterday was saying, hey, look, it would be easier to scale and survey communities at a wider pace if you had a drone like what's being used right now, where you can survey much larger swaths of the area. So it's still a continuation of the conversation where technology allows us to do a whole lot more than simple manpower. So it's a matter of just having to survey the area. This drone actually continues into the Lekki Phase 1 area and shows you the front gates of the entrance to Admiralty Way. The gates were destroyed. I mean, they completely took them off the hinges. And you will see the shot in a second. They took them off the hinges. Then it also, okay, you're going to get to the gates now. You can see the suits in the middle of the road there. Funny enough, this is where the roundabouts used to be. They've removed those roundabouts now to make it easier for commuters. But as it's zooming in now, those are the gates at Phase 1. They're destroyed, completely knocked them over. And even further on, the further footage from here, you'll actually, so we're zooming in now on the front gates, and you'll see that those gates have been damaged. This is again part of the aftermath of what we saw yesterday. We're even going to get to a portion of the footage where you'll see the aftermath of the GTB bank that suffered fire. And it's going to zoom in on the actual portion of the building that was burned. So again, you know, okay, so now we're zooming in. You can see parts of the barricades. You can see the gates on the right-hand side where people enter. That's been completely pulled off. Rufai was just talking about economic damage just seconds ago. All these repairs are going to cost a lot of money. At this one now on Newsday, we're talking about insurance costs. Okay, now we're coming up to the GTB Bank now, and you will see it's going to the right. It's zooming in a little bit to the left to take a bit to go that in, but there it is. So if you look to the right, you'll see how black the side of that GTB building is. So that's part of the fire that took place yesterday, where a number of these banks were set ablaze. So now the drone is coming in. You can actually see, you know, for the benefit of sunlight, you can see the dark side of the building and where the burns took place. So, you know, there's been a whole lot of damage across the Lagos State. It's going to cost a lot of money. These are businesses that, you know, can't afford to be shut down again. This is essentially a second lockdown with the curfew. It was difficult for everybody that's here today to get to the office because of the different barricades that were everywhere. So when you even think about insurance, the insurance cost, in fact, this is a mall. We're going to even scroll now to it. The drone is going to come to this one of these malls. This is a mall. Look at the broken glass there. This is again taking in damage. You can see the glass on the ground floor of this mall that is also on Admiralty Way. So that was part. Yeah, there's the glass right there. So again, you know, drone footage it helps so much to be able to assess all these things at a glance. It's zooming in now, you can see all the broken glass on the floor. And again, so we looked at bank damage, look at the damage to the entrance to Admiralty, and look at the top corner. Those are the men that we just took that still footage earlier on. Those are the men there at the ATM. I think that's a Zenith Bank ATM, which is right at the entrance of Admiralty. So, you know, again, this is part of the aftermath of what we've seen with respect to damage. It's going to cost a lot of money. It's going to, you know, insurance premiums, insurance underwriting. The toll is still not being operable. There was an estimate that the toll had lost about 234 million naira. That was in 12 days of not being used. Ozi Okoli was also on ground yesterday, where he went through all the fire damage that we saw to the toll. So when you add all this up and you put all this together, the damage my estimate should be well into the billions as to the amount of damage that's been caused so far.
Well, first, a comment on Access Bank. I think it was important that Access Bank came out and issued a statement so that other people do not get the impression that Access Bank was colluding with the Nigerian army to oppress innocent protesters, or to inflict violence on persons who may have gone beyond the necessary bounds of freedom of expression. And it's good that you have helped them to focus on it. But the issue, again, is that, look, if you look at the way this reaction by persons we refer to as hoodlums is going, it's like the poor now punishing the poor. It's not necessarily the poor punishing the rich, because many of these businesses that are being targeted, either ATM machines being destroyed, glasses being broken, or, you know, supermarkets being looted. All of these businesses employ Nigerians, people who themselves are aggrieved, people who themselves would ordinarily join the protest. Look at the amount of damage that has happened. Some of those businesses, you may assume that they have very good insurance. Some may not have. Some of the smaller businesses that have been affected. So at the end of the day, it's the people who will bear the cost of it. Already even the stock market, we're told, has lost over 100 billion. We were quoting the Lagos Chamber of Commerce and Industry yesterday, calculating the amount of loss that has happened. And now, who is going to pay for all of this? Some of those businesses will probably retrench staff. Some of them will probably not be able to recover. The Lagos State government has talked about a 200 million naira compensation fund for victims of police brutality. Now, who is going to compensate all those other institutions that suffered yesterday, particularly people who do not have the weight? So that's why I think, you know, engagement is important. Rufai was talking earlier on about community leaders. The truth of the matter is that these so-called hoodlums, they may look like they are disorganized, but they are not as disorganized as we think. You know, alphabets don't just drop from heaven and write a book or write a poetry. There is always an author. And it is for the government to look at that underground network that is already sabotaging, the Nigerian economy. The economy is in tatters, definitely. And, all of us are going to pay for it invariably. I raised the point earlier, what is the point in raising down 12 police stations and cutting away arms and ammunition? What is the point in pulling down traffic lights? The same traffic lights that you have removed that will later cause accident. What is the point in burning down BRT buses? BRT buses that are used by the poor. So there are emerging contradictions within the last 24 hours that government will need to deal with and address. And it's not only Access Bank that is offering clarifications. The owners of that toll gate plaza, the managers, they've issued a statement. The owners of Oriental Hotel, they've issued a statement saying that, look, this hotel does not belong to anybody. Primero, I think that's the name, the traffic company that runs some of the BRT buses. They've also issued a statement saying yesterday alone they lost over 100 million naira. Who is going to compensate for these losses? Indeed,
there's absolutely no rhyme or reason in a mobocracy, as we're seeing now. It's actually self-inflicted wounds that are happening. And as we're counting the cost, which Dr. Abasi just stated, let's also remember Paystack, which we all hailed as a huge victory. That was one step forward, 2 steps back. How will foreign investors, how does the international business community look at Nigeria now with this huge implosion that's going on?
Well said points, colleagues, this morning. Thank you so much, Rotus Odiri. We'll go to London now. Michael Wilson joining us from London. Michael, how are you?
Good morning. Fine, thank you. I'll just take you briefly through Asia. There's an interesting mystery story coming up, but just as far as the figures are concerned, basically following Wall Street slightly lower. The IMF has downgraded Asia Pacific as a region, apart, of course, from China. Again, I mean, you can make these figures up, basically. But here's the mystery story. So markets in Asia, they were actually dominated yesterday by the announcement that US intelligence officials, and they are announcing that Russia and Iran have been attempting to interfere with the US election process. Now, again, no great surprise about that, but how they're actually voting is quite interesting. I mean, call it voting or trying to influence. Russia appears to be encouraging voters to go for a Trump victory, but Iran appears to be firmly in favor of Joe Biden. Record numbers, obviously, as American casting their votes early. So the lesson here is, well, yes, of course, you would expect those two countries maybe to get involved. Who knows what happens in the world of secrecy? But it'll be no surprise, I think, if the US election is certainly right now much too close to call. And the Senate race, which is really where the meat of the election is going to be, is much too close to call as well. So your US recap goes a bit like this. All that apart, the stimulus talks, the old stimulus talks go on and on. Pelosi and Mnuchin that continues to dominate the financial markets, flip-flopping every day between whichever comment actually comes out. The White House, according to the White House and the Democrats, the White House and the Democrats are apparently getting closer together, but who knows? I don't think we're going to see a mega package much before the election or even much after the election. I think it's still going to take some time. We're still now apparently Republicans in the Senate want to advance a much smaller $500 billion relief bill, well below the $2.1 trillion that the Democrats want, and well below Trump's $1.9 trillion that he said he'd be happy to sign. Again, nothing really. I don't think we're going to see before the election. But in the eternal search right now for the markets to latch onto something, they're latching on to that. As far as the UK is concerned, some slightly positive tone within the UK Brexit and trade talks. Michel Barnier, the EU's chief negotiator, has at last conceded that there may be some form of compromise. I suspect most people involved in those discussions are definitely thinking that as well. Pound reacted quite well to that sort of development. There may be some kind of pathway, but I have to say that given the economic environment, given the way that countries are suffering at the moment, I don't think that we're going to see a mutually agreeable deal, quite honestly. And I think it'll go right down to the wire. And I think politicians are actually putting their own countries first instead of particular ideologies about Brexit. But there we are. Our Chancellor of the Exchequer, our Finance Minister, Rishi Sunak, is about to make an economic statement later today. Now, in the rush yesterday, I don't know whether I got to you saying that actually what's going to happen is we're not going to get the usual 3-year autumn comprehensive spending review, as it's called. He's going to go just for the 1 year. I mean, but when that's going to be, nobody really knows. Further lockdowns as far as big cities like Manchester and Birmingham are concerned. And I do find this rather odd. I did actually say this earlier in the week that, you know, these districts are quibbling about some job relief of £5 million. The country has borrowed £200 billion since March. Who cares about that? Well, the bond markets don't. So if the bond markets don't care about it, then we don't either, basically. It's a false economy and it'll have to be paid for in the end, but nothing new there. Gold, here you go. Gold threatening to break out as investors look at a bit more of the risk, a bit less of the stimulus impasse and so on, and the COVID increase too. Oil slightly down. Here's one that I know absolutely nothing about, and I stay clear of it because, in the words of my old Yorkshire mum, if you don't know out, then say nout. And this is what I'm doing, but I can tell you that Bitcoin is apparently up from 12,000 to 12,800 as people are looking towards that as a sort of development of the continuing uncertainty going on. But please do not ask me about Bitcoin because I find it such a strange thing. I don't know. Rotus is your man about that. He knows a lot more about it than I do.
Okay. I mean, I don't want to be cheeky. I'll start by asking you about Bitcoin, but it's fine. I don't want to be cheeky. But I'll go straight to it this morning. How do you think that a man that has not signed up a stimulus package for an economy bleeding such as the American economy can turn things around leading up to an election that is just less than 13 days away, owing to the fact that this same man was said to have a Chinese bank account where he paid over $200,000 or close to $200,000 in taxes, and this same man paid $750 in taxes to his own government in America. That man I'm talking about is a real estate speculator that is the president of America.
What do you want me to say? I mean, yeah, of course. You know, that's the way we are. These stories leak out, and you look at the White House and you wring your hands, don't you, and say, what on earth is going on? And I suppose if I were an elector, I mean, I've got most of my friends who contact me have been complaining about President Trump from the United States. Therefore, they hang a sign on their door saying they're Democrats. And I say to them, well, yeah, of course, Kamala, of course, is going to take over from Joe Biden if Joe Biden gets in, because, you know, you can't have somebody who's approaching their 80s, with all due respect to 80-year-olds, you know, running a country. I mean, I'm over 70. I will continue to work until the brain stops, but it won't be that long, you know. And I mean, I do feel as though some younger blood ought to come in, because I don't think that either Trump or Biden are particularly representative of a world which is moving really fast now. Social media, different kinds of economies, rebuilding things, you know, that the old economic things are right out of the window. Yes, you're going to see these scandals. There'll be more scandals as we approach the election. That's the way of American politics. The fact is, the most important thing is this stimulus package, as you quite rightly said at the beginning of your question. That's the one thing I find it totally amazing that's not been agreed. Even if you were to complain about it and say, you know, it's just debt for the future and so on, interest rates are so low, and I can't see any indication. I mean, you look at the gilts market right now. You know, it gives if you believe in that kind of thing, it gives every indication of interest rates being low for quite some time, beyond the time to repay this money. So let's get that money into Americans' pockets and let's get them spending it, is my view.
Well, Michael, two quick things. One is a straightforward question about the U.S. presidential election. The dollar has become volatile. The Chinese stock is pulling back. There's also a lot of volatility in Asia. But how would the markets, do you get a sense that the markets are preparing for a possibility of a Joe Biden presidency and then a Senate that could be dominated by the Republicans? If that were to happen, if we have that scenario, it could result in paralysis. It could result into a lot of conflicts with regard to fiscal policy. Now, is there any sense of the markets preparing for that? That's one. The second one is a cultural shock question. The British Poultry Council is asking the government to lower restrictions, visa restrictions, quarantine restrictions for certain category of skillful persons who can help with Christmas turkey, because there isn't enough people, they're saying, in England to process and slaughter turkey. And I was wondering, how is that such a big issue?
Let's do the turkey first. I think what's happening there is that I heard it late summer, and I live in an area which has got quite a lot of farmers around, and we were joking about it. And I was saying that, are you actually making turkeys smaller for Christmas because there'll be fewer people around a table? And they said, actually, yes, they are. You know, which is quite interesting, isn't it? And I think that as far as doing those kind of jobs is concerned, you won't find many people in this country who would like to do it, because I think the vast majority of people in this country are pretty lazy when it comes to real jobs. They'd much prefer to sit at a laptop rather than wring turkey necks. So there's that.
Okay, Michael, I'd like to say a very big thank you. That great one about turkey. Goodness me, I can't wait for Christmas turkey. Thanks so much, Michael.